Hello, everybody, and welcome to Choice, Change, and Action podcast. You are with me, your host, Simone Milasas. And today I have Michael Ocha from Los Angeles, California, United States of America. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Simone. Huge honor to be here. A fan of the podcast. So
it's an honor to have you here. Now, we haven't planned this out of what we're talking about, but I do know the topic we want to talk about is money. And yeah, you've been to many Access Consciousness classes, and excuse me, you've been to many Access Consciousness classes, and I don't actually know your story, which is good because I like hearing about your story when we're live on the podcast. But I know one thing is, as far as I know, is you've changed a lot of your financial reality using Access tools. Is that correct?
yes, that is very, very correct.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your story. I don't know, growing up, where did you grow up, etc., and also with money. Like, what was your life like with money?
Sure. So I was born in Republic of Georgia, which was part of USSR, and I was born into a very, very wealthy family for Soviet Union, especially. Soviet Union, you had no private business, you couldn't accumulate wealth, everything was for the common good, right? So, but my grandfather, who was a business genius, he basically was able to create a production of textiles in Georgia under Soviet Union and import, export, and he became very, very, very wealthy for someone who is in Soviet Union, where you don't have, like a salary was just an allowance to help you survive. You could not buy a house. You could not. It would be given to you by the government.
Right.
And he did something very revolutionary. He was just a maverick.
So how did let's I'm so glad I didn't know your story. Because obviously growing up, he grew up in the communistic times. So with the communistic ruling, so how did he outcreate that then? How did he get away with that? I love that he did, but
yeah. I mean, I was shocked. I only found out when I was like 20 something.
Right.
I just presumed we were just wealthy. And then I start talking to my dad and he's like, well, yeah, he had a textile industry, like a whole empire. And I was like, what do you mean? We lived in Soviet Union. You cannot own a business. How did that happen? So the way it operated, let me give you the whole structure of it.
Yeah.
So Russia and Moscow was very much under the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. There, it wouldn't be possible. The republics, which were like, I think 14 republics, like Georgia, people were, if you had the brains and you had the ability, you would start to do something like that, where you would actually start your business. You would obviously, I'm sure he bribed the government, which was the only way possible.
Of course. But I mean, we all bribe the government in some way, in some way, and it's like it's just not as captain obvious in some areas. Like when I did business in India, I used to have to pay. They called it bakshish, which literally means gratitude, right? Like tipping, but it wasn't tipping; it was bribery money. It's like I couldn't get my stuff out of India unless I bribed someone. But you just put it on your cost, like your landed cost. It was like, okay, my bakshish. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to backtrack 1 second here. And forgive my ignorance. It's like my father was actually from Lithuania, so one of the Baltic countries, which was overtaken by Russia for quite some time. When you say the countries, there was 14 areas. I'm not asking you to name them all. This is not a school test. But the republics. Can you talk more about that? Like, what was that? Because Georgia was a republic.
Originated from Russia.
Yeah.
It was this ginormous superpower from 19th century, right? And it kind of dominated and autonomized actually a lot of the republics next to it. Belarus, Ukraine, Lithuania, maybe, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, all these, and everything that was close to it
became a republic of the Soviet Union.
Yes. Okay. Once the Tsar was overthrown, the new government was like, wait a minute, we gotta get these guys back. and they invaded, took over, and said, "Now you're a republic of the Soviet Union." And it's not like anyone in an army to fight or anything. It wasn't a choice. It was, you were just enacted and annexed, kind of.
Right. Okay. So now the Republic of the Soviet Union, but now it's, I mean, obviously we've got the Russia, Ukraine, but I know Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia became their own countries again after a very, very long time. Okay. Thank you. And anyone listening to this, I'm sorry if my ignorance of that area. I love learning about history, and I love learning about how things changed. And I think it's interesting because we all freak out about what goes on today. And it's like, have you looked at history? It's like, and everything that has occurred from dinosaurs to things in the world that we have no idea how they were built even today. There is so much that has gone on this planet that we have not acknowledged and are avoiding actually looking at what has occurred, why it occurred, and what has, eventuated from it. So, yeah. So thank you for the history. So let's go on. Your grandfather was amazing, basically, creating a business in Georgia and probably paying off the government, absolutely, but still making money in the process.
Yeah. And he basically left a huge fortune to his 3 kids. He passed away very early in a car accident when he was 50. Very sad. Yeah.
In Georgia, living in Georgia.
Yeah.
So your father was born in Georgia, and you were born in Georgia. At what age did you leave Georgia?
When I was 8.
When you were 8, okay.
Yeah.
And when you say a lot of money, let's go US dollars. In what?
So it's an astronomical number, but for Soviet Union, it was like, in today's, it would be like $6 million without inflation.
Okay.
So that's
okay, and that's years ago. That is a lot of money.
A lot of,
that is a lot of money, especially in the Soviet Union. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When everyone around you basically just lives, paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was born into that, into very kind of the mindset was, and the point of view was, we never have to really work again. So my grandma said, to her kids that you should be into science and arts. Don't go into business. She really was afraid of it because I think, So
that's actually really inspiring and empowering, though. Like that you have, because you see a lot of people who would create a lot of money, but then, well, it's not enough. And it's funny I say that because for me, the money I've created is also not enough. And yet, I have desires for things like I learned yesterday, I was talking to my brother, and he was talking about a friend of his who has done really well and brought up all this land in Australia for the kangaroos. She literally got this, through legislation on the land that there would never be able to have cattle there, etc., and all this stuff. She's signed. So if anyone bought this land in the future, the land is for the kangaroos, and that's what she's bought it for. And I was like, that's what I want to do for koalas. So I have that sense I never have enough money, but not from lack or not from greed, just from there is so much I would like to contribute to on the planet. So I love the way she's like, hey, educate yourself, inspire yourself, and motivated you all to do something different.
Totally. Yeah. What a beautiful. I remember I heard you say that on the podcast before, and I'm like, wow, that's very inspiring and a different point of view, that you're actually doing it not just for you, but you're doing it for a greater good.
Yeah, I love money too. I've learned to love money. I've learned to appreciate it. I've learned to be grateful. I way prefer traveling first in business class, things like that. It's like I used to avoid money and disdain it and all of that. And money, actually, I like the fact that I can walk into any restaurant and order food and I'm not freaking out about the cost of it. It's like, having money has relaxed me in a lot of ways. And I think that people don't look at that. They look at it as something that has to be hard or significant or corrupt or have all this stuff that goes with it. And you can also have relaxation with money. You can have ease with money. You can have this joy with money and this gratitude for money, because I do. I'm very grateful for what I have created. I don't consider myself lucky. I consider that I took a lot of action to have money show up in my life. So,
Right. Totally.
and continuously grateful for it. Yeah. So,
Right.
okay, go on, Michael.
So, born into this mindset that, and I heard it a few times, that none of us will ever have to work. We're so well off that that's it. But then in '89, or the Soviet Union collapses,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there was no. We were just living very luxuriously, comfortably, and really great, really blissful life. But then when the Soviet Union came to an end, it was like, okay, now we actually have to do something, because now this is not going to last us.
Right.
And not only that, it was a point of very interesting time in Georgia. Georgia is an extremely welcoming country, and the people are very welcoming, very, very hospitable, and extremely welcoming. And all of a sudden, Georgia, the president is like, Georgia is for Georgians, and everyone else needs to leave the country. And we're Georgian, but I'm not. I have Jewish roots, I have European roots. I don't look Georgian, so it was like we got to get out of here. This is scary. This is like not safe.
Right.
Yeah. So we started looking towards US, but to get there, we went to Moscow. So I traveled a
Yep.
lot when I was a kid, and and those $6 million, I think, came to an end at some point, and my dad started to run his business, which was a
What
very
business did you start in? So you went to Moscow,
yeah.
and then you got to the US. Was it easy to get to the US?
It was pretty easy, yeah, because we migrated. So
Right. And you
we were,
had money.
yes, we were riding on that wave still, and it was great. It was
Yeah.
very curious, and also my dad started actually. He started actually a very successful business, but he didn't have the best tools and ways of how to accumulate wealth. So we had
Mm-hmm.
an enormous income, but the outflow was insane. From what I see, we were spending like.
That's a very common occurrence, including even in my own life. I have to put a check on myself every now and then, because it's like, you need the inflow to have that amount of outflow. You need this inflow to have that amount of outflow. It's like,
Yeah.
I think it's something, and I often wonder, Michael, like for what reason we choose that. Like we seem to have so much outflow, and it's almost like to test ourselves to see, can we handle this?
Yeah.
Like to create more inflow. Like, do we use it to motivate ourselves or something like that? So, and then the people who just have inflow don't seem to have much joy with money, because they're just hoarding it and holding on to it and not actually enjoying it. So,
Right.
what would it take to have this happy, living with money in our lives?
Totally.
So, yeah. So you got to California. Did you move straight to Los Angeles?
New York. So
New
I'm
York.
very much a New Yorker and a Moscovian. I associate with both cities, love them both. And and that's it. I started.
So what was the business that your father started?
So he had an incredible opportunity that was given to him, which was office supplies incoming from, I'm not sure which African country, but an African country, which was kind of receiving it as a donation, but then actually exporting it inside. So,
Right.
sorry to burst some bubbles, but a lot of charity goes to that. So
A lot of topics, yes.
So basically, he was able to set up this incredibly, incredibly prosperous company that was buying office supplies that's cheaper than the actual seller.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was coming from US and then exporting it to Russia, very cheap for a huge profit,
Right.
and had this incredible system of just generating a lot of money. And we were living in two cities.
Right. In New
Yeah.
York and LA.
Yeah, New York and Moscow.
Okay, New York and Moscow. And
Yeah.
it sounds like your father, the way you talk, is he still alive or is he passed?
No, he passed. He passed a year ago. Yeah.
Okay. And how was it towards the end of his life? Like, was he still successful? Or?
So what started to happen, he had no accumulation. I realized he would not accumulate almost any money. He would support everyone around him, all his relatives, anyone that came to him would get money. All his employees are living luxuriously right now, but he had such I don't know, a need to like.
I'm going to call it also a generosity of spirit,
You,
because
yes,
my father was the same.
yeah,
Like, we would, anytime we went out to, we'd go and have a meal, and no matter how many or who was at the table, my father paid.
yeah,
And my father would have such a generosity of spirit. He wanted you to have everything. And like, no matter who you were, if
yeah,
he could gift you, he would give to you. And it was interesting growing up with that, because my mother was always like, she was always yelling at him, but she was like, Leon, you don't have to pay for the. And she
mm,
was always putting him down for it. And I watched how much joy it gave him, and how much him gifting others, because he wanted all of us to be comfortable and have money, because he escaped from Lithuania during World War II. It's a phenomenal story. And
wow,
so he escaped from Lithuania during World War II when he was 14 years of age. And
wow,
so for him, growing up, we always got, education was very important, and, making sure that you have some money. Okay. That was two things that dad was always like, making sure you had this stability, like get a house, do something like this, because he didn't have that for so long and strived for it. And really, he was amazing at things that he chose to get to where he was. So he was always empowering others to whatever he could contribute to them, for them to have more. So I get that sense that your father was like that too, which is a
very,
really beautiful trait and not acknowledged enough on this
mm,
planet, I think.
very true, very true, very generous, very like provider. He would
Mm.
like any family member that would come, and some were appreciative and some did something with it, and the others just kind of used it. It's just,
Mm.
yeah. But that also came. It's kind of, he got it from his father, because he would say like, he would tell me like, your grandfather, he was very well off, but he would help everyone. There was no
Yeah.
one. It wasn't a stingy accumulation. It's all for us. No, like if someone needs, let's help.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does it get any better than that? Can I just ask more of that in the world, please? And it's funny, I was talking about it, just even lands in my world of what else and who else can I contribute to as well. So thank you for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's beautiful.
So let's go to you with money and business.
Yeah. So I had a huge tendency from this. I had this point of view that there's just always money is always going to come.
Hmm.
Money's always going to come. There's always money. There's no lack, you know. But and another also with that, what I had is I loved accumulating debt. I loved accumulating debt. It was, with thanks to Access, I realized all these crazy points of view I had about it, but it would be almost like an addiction and a
Hmm.
safety. Like, oh, I have debt. Okay, now we're good. We're good. I owe a lot of money. Amazing. Thank you. That means I've accomplished. I've done something, which
Can
was
I, yeah, do you have an awareness of, because again, that's not an unusual point of view,
yeah.
weirdly. And I know you've been in classes of mine and heard me talk, etc. And one of the things I got to with debt was I knew that energy. I was really comfortable in it. I knew what it was like to be in debt. It was, and same sort of thing. And I think for me, I used it as a motivation so I could get my hustle on and be like, okay, how am I going to pay rent this week? And it was so familiar. So do you have an awareness of why you were choosing that?
I would get. The two things that I remember is safety, and as crazy as it sounds, and all these points of view are, I think, always crazy. It's like, if I have a big debt, that means I'm doing good. My
Wow.
my association was, if I have this like a credit card bill coming to me with like, these very large numbers that don't not very large numbers that don't necessarily match my income, then we're
Yeah.
good. So I had to have that adrenaline rush. I needed to have that like,
Yeah.
well, what are we gonna do? Like, how am I?
That's the piece.
Yeah,
That's the piece, the adrenaline rush.
yeah,
And so if you're listening to this and you're going, Michael's a little crazy, it's true, because
yeah,
and he's correct. It's the way this works is we have these insane points of view that lock us up. if we could work everything out with our logical mind, we'd have everything we ever desired. We'd ask for it and poof, it would show up. And so, if you're listening and Michael's talking about this and you're like, why would that be? Why would you choose that? Well, one of the things I got to, and by the way, I was listening to this class. We have an app called the Access.me app, right? It's amazing. And it's all the classes that we've had on Access Consciousness for the past, I don't know, 25, 27 years or something like that, except for the last 2 years. You can't get the last 2 years. It's a majority of the classes that we've had on there. And for, I think it's like $275 a month, you get to have them all. It works like Spotify, so you stream it. And I found the other day the money class that changed my financial reality. We had it in the Gold Coast, Australia. I think it was in 2004. It's simply called the money class. Obviously, we just, it's the money class. And it's so interesting to listen to it because I can hear myself. You can't hear the people as well. Like our audio system wasn't as great, but you can. The Gary is so young and enthusiastic, and it's amazing, this class to listen to. But that's the class that I came to the awareness, and I can hear myself. And I was talking to Dane about like this, this rookie energy of just being like, and the vibration I have changed, like the frequency, I've changed so much since then, which I'm super grateful for. But I had this awareness in that class that one of the reasons, the insane points of view I had of why I was creating debt was to keep my father alive, because I absolutely adored my father. And he said to me, I will not leave you. I will not die. Like, I won't leave this body until I know you are financially stable. And I had 2 older stepsisters and an older brother, and they were doing okay. And I realized I was creating myself to be this financial mess so my father would stay alive. And it's like, that is also an insane point of view. Like with yourself going, hey, I'm okay now. I've got, more outflow than inflow. It's an insane point of view. So let's do this. If you're listening to this, don't judge me and Michael. It's like, have a look at the insane points of view that you have around money and all the insane points of view that you are currently functioning from. Will you now destroy and uncreate it? Times a godzillion. Right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all 100, shorts, boys, probirds, creations, spaces, and beyonds. And we finally have the new video up of myself and Dr. Dane here talking about the clearing statement. If you'd like to go check it out, it's at theclearingstatement.com. So yeah, it's, the access stuff, like the clearing statement, etc. That to me is some of the weirdest stuff that we look at. But the basis of it is you're going to the point of creation of when you started something like that. Like if Michael still functioned from that point of view, then he would still be creating that same reality. If I still function from that point of view, then I would still be creating that same reality. And we get to choose every day to change our reality, to choose something different. I mean, that's what this podcast is about, choice, change, and action, that you got to take that action. And part of that action is actually using the clearing statement if you choose. And you can just say POC and POD. If you don't remember everything else, just say POC and POD. So, okay. So Michael, back to you and the money and the debt. And then so you've changed this now, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was very, very. I had one specific. I don't remember what it was. I think it might have been a creative edge with you and Gary that I listened to, that I participated in, and I remember I was doing exercise afterwards, and it just, how you have these like dawning moments and you just get a download, and I just received this download that it's a point of view. There is no scarcity. There is no, the whole point of view of me being in scarcity, need, in lack, in how do I get more, etc. Money is just that energy of lack and like that angst or whatever. It's just a choice and an energy, and it kind of just like melted, and I was in such ease, and I'm like, I am creating my financial reality. And that to me, that moment, it was like a eureka, total enlightenment moment. And that's when it like totally shifted. I'm like, I need to take it into my hands. I am creating it, which, we say a million times, I'm creating it. I need to acknowledge that it's me who's creating this reality, and I'm choosing to create a completely different reality. And that shift, it didn't come from like a fear, a lack, but like actually an ease and a relaxation. It was just like, wow, like, let it go. Like, stop functioning from that. There is no problem. There isn't. It's not a problem. That was another addiction, an adrenaline rush. That I wanted it to be a problem. I wanted to be a lack. It was very
Yeah.
intense.
I thank you so much. I love that too. That the wow, this is so cool because it is that simple just to acknowledge that you're choosing it. And then if you're choosing, if you've created your, like wherever you are right now, if you're listening, where your financial reality is at is because that's what you chose. Whether you like it or not is another point of
Yeah.
view, but that's what you chose. So what else could you choose? And let me talk about choice for a second, because I've got this story which I love. I was in Melbourne, Australia, with Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness, and Dr. Dane here, who's the co-creator. And Dane was like grumpy about something, and he was like, and we're in Melbourne in the city, and we went to cross this road, and we're about to cross the road, and Gary goes, you can choose to change this, right? And he was like, rah, 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 we crossed the road. So it's not very far. It's like 4 lanes or something, to each side. And we get to the other side of the road, and Dane looks at us and he goes, I can choose to change this. And he goes, okay, done. And his whole energy just changed. And I'll never forget it, because I was like, he changed everything by crossing a road, And it's true. You can change everything by crossing a road, in an instantaneous moment. And Access Consciousness has so many tools to contribute to you with that. And what I'd like to say is, if you've never done an Access class, maybe go check it out. There is Access bars. There's practitioners and facilitators all over the world. You can go to accessconsciousness.com, and there's so many different classes. And even if you just
do it because it will make your life easier, Simone.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do it. But even if you start asking questions, because we tend to go to this conclusion and thinking that if we work everything out ourselves, then we'll get the result we think is the best one. And, there's so much more available. You can ask for a universe of possibilities, even just asking, what else is possible, asking for the magic and the miracles to show up. I was talking to Gary before we came on this podcast, and we require more money to continue building at El Lugar in Costa Rica, and the property that we have there. And I'm so proud of what we have created. It's open. It's friggin' amazing. It's beautiful. I'm heading there next week. I'll be there for a month. And we also require more money. And I said to Gary, there's so much money in the world. Like, where are we not asking for it to show up, that it could show up? Let's ask for what we desire. And every time you're looking for some sort of solution, rather than asking for what you desire, you literally limit your money flows. And I know that may sound airy-fairy, but guess what, guys? It's not solid, and it's not this solid, meaningful, relevant energy that we've been making it. Money is so fluid. And when you ask for it to show up and you're willing to receive, and you stop avoiding receiving, there is so much more that's possible. So even today, like whether you go to an Access class or not is up to you, your choice. Just ask for the magic and miracles to show up. What magic and miracles can show up today? Simple.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So Michael, I want to ask you, what are some of the tools that you used that started to change your financial reality?
So that was one of them. That was like, I think that was that starting to trickle everything, the domino that started to really shift everything into a different direction, that specific moment. And then I was like, again, something I heard in class, it's like, if you want to do something, educate yourself. Like, come on. Like, don't be a victim and keep saying you don't know, or blah, 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 whatever reasons you come up with. Like, put yourself on a course and educate yourself. And I was like, you know what, Simone, you have 2 amazing books. I was like, reading them. That's it. Committing to reading it. I'm gonna get all the info, everything I can have, everything I can get to create this change. And I just set myself on a course. I committed to it. I said, we're doing this. This is it. The biggest, I think, what everyone can experience is, for example, for me, it was like, so I'm choosing it, and we always, in Access, what I love is the choice. And it's like, when you choose it, it's like, wait a minute, so why didn't it just drop down on me, right? But the choice is a creative space that for me, the next step to create that was to get more insight. So I started listening to a lot of books, a lot of classes, a lot of material, and functioning from that point of view, keep choosing that point of view, that I'm changing this debt, that the debt that I have is not going to hang over me. And that's it. I'm choosing it.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I think I was listening to your book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, and something else. I don't remember the exact sequence, but I was definitely listening to your book. I was listening to it, which is an amazing book. Highly recommend to everyone. And
Thank you.
yes, and I'm listening to it, and then I realized that I started using another tool that Access says, which is keeping the 10% to yourself for a pretty long time, almost for like a few years already. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can loan the money to myself. And instead of paying someone for giving me money, I'll pay myself to loan the money to me. So I realized I have much more wealth accumulated than I had debt, which was a little bit shocking to me at first. I'm like, holy moly, I've created all that money. I have accumulated that, which was daunting. And then I'm like, let me just pay all these credit cards and these, these loans that I have with the money that I have, charge interest to myself, but at least I'll accumulate it. I'll earn the money. And that was the second eureka. That was like the actualization and a manifestation of that.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're talking about? For people who don't know what the honor account is, the 10% account is, can you talk about that?
So again, like you said, Access has, I don't know, infinite amount of tools, like literally infinite amount of tools, such a vast world. And one of the recommendations, I think it's in foundations class, but almost in any money related, right, riches book, class, etc., is that you start to actually take 10% of everything you earn and you completely, I would say, religiously put it aside and don't touch it. And it's a beautiful concept. And it's something else that I teach Kabbalah, which also has that concept, right? Of taking 10% and honoring yourself. But I never took it that deeply, right?
Right.
But when I heard it, I was like, wow, because Gary has also this way of delivering things. So I was like, okay, this has to work. So I started doing it, and it changed everything. Everything started to change. I started to realize also this devastation and lack of financial reality or money started to disappear, because I'm like, as much as I can want to panic, if I look at my accounts, I have a pretty, like, sorry, it's not real. Exactly. And then something that I really love that Kabbalah teaches is like attracts like. And it's what Access says is that when you start to have a certain amount in that saving, in that honoring account of you, when you accumulate it after a while, you start to realize you're pretty wealthy. And that is such a huge mind shift. And then when you have the mindset of I'm wealthy, more wealth is just going to come to you. You know how to generate it. The other way, what I was doing before that, is I was in debt, I was in lack, and I was actually accumulating and creating more lack, more debt, more desperation, etc. And I was making money, this source of adrenaline, for nonsense. So that too, super simple, but I heard it a lot of times, and I was like, you know what? That's it. I'm doing this. I'm taking 10%. It was not logical. It didn't make sense. It's like, who am I putting it away? Why can't I use it for something? Because the guidelines are you take 10% of every single dollar you make, you set it aside, and you put it into something that's easily liquidable, right? So if your saving account, put it in your home, gold, silver, jewels, whatever, but you have that as untouchable. And lo and behold, magically it worked.
So it's so interesting you talking about your story and the tools that you're using, because it's so similar to myself. Like when I created debt, I just kept creating more and more debt. It was just how it worked and how it rolled, And the same thing with wealth. It's like when you actually make that choice to start creating wealth, it's more wealth shows up, and in various ways. And I'm not saying it's all like this, rainbows and unicorns. It's not. There's this, ebbs and flows of everything, but that's life, and that's actually living. And yet, for me, someone asked me the other day, what is one of the hardest things I've ever chosen? And I said, to get out of debt. It was so familiar. And it sounds so stupid to go, oh, here's one life, you're in debt. Here's another life, you have money. Which one are you going to choose? And you go, I'll have the one that's going to have money. But to make that shift was one of the hardest things that I did. And the tool that you're talking about, the 10% or honor account, I like to call it too, is I hated that tool. Like, I thought that was the dumbest tool in the world, especially when I owed so much money. And I was like, what an asshole. I'm putting 10% of my money away for me for this honor account that I never get to spend. And I owe all these people money. But I just knew, Michael, that I had to start choosing something different. So I did. And like you, I noticed after a few months, I went, wow, it's not like I had all this money, but there was an energy that I was very aware of that changed. And my point of view around money was changing. The scarcity was changing. The anxiety was changing. That when your organs tighten in your guts because you've got to create money really quickly, that all started to change. And I went, oh, I'd like more of this, please. So then that's when I did start using more and more of the access consciousness tools in regards to money. And yeah, here I am today. And it's like, it's interesting too, because even now it's like where I'm at, I have created money, I have created wealth, I do have, different investments, etc. And you don't get to this place where you've got it. It's a constant state of education. But for me, it's become more of a play. And just recently, I've demanded of myself that it is more of a play and is more of a joy, because I realized too, I even started to make some things relevant or meaningful. And I was like, I think I'm losing the joy of business. And I was like, okay, so what do I need to change here? It's like, I'll stop making everything relevant. And if you were choosing again, what would you play with? Like, what would be the fun and the joy and the ease of this? So I've been playing in a really different realm, I would say, this year so far in 2025. And it's way more relaxing.
Yeah.
Is what I want to add as well. And I think relaxation is a really key part to changing any area of your life, whether it's financial or business or relationships or anything, is relaxing into that change, not frantically changing. It's like relax into the change that you can choose. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Michael, is there any? Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to share. I really remembered another thing that the debt was doing to me was kind of taking me out of being present in my life and always being an escape. Which, if you're familiar with consciousness work, you always want to look for those crazy points of view. But that crazy point of view was kind of like I was never really living. It was more like this on the side survival, but never really being here. So
that's so true. That is so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that switched, I was like, wait a minute, I'm here. And if I don't choose and I don't change it, it's never going to happen. That was also very kind of like beautiful, but a little bit of a hard truth that it's not going to change. You cannot be expecting it to drop from the sky.
And I did. I was like, I so expected one day that someone was going to knock on my door and go, Simone, we've got it handled for you. Don't worry about it.
I think that's what inspired me also. When I was listening to one of your books, I think you shared that, and I was like, holy moly, I'm doing the same thing. I'm waiting for it to be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So Michael, I want to ask you a few questions. I've started asking at the end of my podcast some questions, different questions. And for the month of January, this is what I'm asking is, what would you like to choose over the next 12 months?
Ooh, what a great question. First thing came is abundance.
Abundance? Abundance of what?
Abundance of possibilities, luxury, beauty of life, experiences. Also, I'm like, there's so many experiences on this planet. Like, I'm just excited to, there's so much.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so what would you like to change over the next 12 months?
Ooh. You know what? I recently, I don't know if this is too deep, but I'm going to share with you what comes to me. Yeah, is I realized how much I operate from of the past and just what is, and instead of looking into the future and saying, what do I want to create? and choose that creation. And that is just like a rocket, beautiful, forward thinking, such a beautiful mindset. So I'm really loving every time I choose it, every time I function from it. That energy is just so light and so creative, and there's just I'm choosing more of that.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you for that. And to add to that, if you're listening to, it's so similar to what I've been asking for. And what I briefly mentioned before is ask for what you desire. Like, dare to ask for what you desire and lean into it and stretch into it instead of, as Michael was saying, using, the past as a reference. If you don't ask for what you desire, how is it going to show up? So yeah, lean into it. Love that. Now, with what you're referring to, if you're actively choosing, what action will you be taking to actualize what you just asked for?
Beautiful question. So very practically for me, I realized that I do have an ability and gift to, facilitate consciousness to people. So I realized that's my joy. That's what does it for me. So, but the proactive side from me is to actually to not to assume that people will come to me, but the action is to reach out to people and offer myself and to say, you know what, this is what I do. Like this is what I do. This is what I offer. This is the product that I have. Are you interested? So
And we will
yeah,
have your details in the show notes as well. And right now, where can people find you?
on Instagram, I have all my info on my Instagram
What's your
handle.
Instagram handle, just for anyone listening?
Michael Ocher. I was the first one.
I was the first Simone Milasas too. I don't think there's another Simone Milasas in the world. My name is so easy to Google. I love it. So, okay.
Or
And we will
Google it.
have all that. Yeah.
I'm working on a way to find me online. So yeah.
Okay, cool. But Instagram is great. Okay.
Yes.
So now you have the attention of the entire world, every single person in the world. What is one tool or question that you would like to say to everybody?
I would say choose lightness, choose what honors you, and if you don't start choosing you, nothing and no one else will. You gotta start choosing you. You gotta start honoring you. You gotta start appreciating you, loving you, whatever it means for you. But you need to look at yourself as, and it's not an egocentric thing, but as the center of the universe. You are
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thank you. And you know what? Thank you for saying that too, because even though I actively choose that, hearing it again seems to always have this deeper enthusiasm and motivation to do that. Because I think a lot of people have the point of view that as they choose for them, they're choosing against someone else. And that's not true. That's one of the biggest lies you've ever been told. Choosing for you actually shows other people they can choose for them too. And what could we create on the planet here if we all actually showed up as ourselves, the brilliance of ourselves? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Michael, last question is, what's next for you?
What's next for you is I have a lot of like personally or in general.
Whatever.
I mean, more and more amazing beings to facilitate, to take them to their greatness. I'm so excited about that. That really just that brings me joy as much as I love everything else and everything, but really working with people is just amazing.
And are you coming to Elugar?
Yes.
You are.
Yes.
Amazing.
I can't
Okay.
believe it. Yeah, it's so daunting.
All
It's
right.
one.
So
You know what? I'm referring back to that moment because it's very surreal for everyone listening. It's like a big deal for me. So, but it's the moment when I paid off the debt, and I was like, hey, you hear that in a book, you're like, where are the trumpets? And I actually messaged you. I'm like, I did it. Where are the trumpets? And you send me a trumpet. So, so this is my trumpets for Elugar creation. I'm so excited.
and so I just got to talk about this for a second, because one of the things that Michael's just referring to is when I got out of debt, I was like, well, what happened? Like, I was like, why isn't the world celebrating? Why aren't they congratulating me? Like this, I was like, this is it. This is a bit boring. So Michael's saying when he texted me when he got out of debt, and it was like, same thing. Like, where's the trumpet? So yeah, there you go. I love it. So this is your
trumpet, which I was very grateful for.
Love it. Okay, so I get to meet you in person. That's awesome.
Yes, I cannot wait. So excited.
Okay, I look forward to it. Okay, so I also wanted to mention that one of the books that we've been referring to as well is called Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, which is the second book that I ever wrote. And everyone's always like, getting out of debt joyfully? It doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, what if you could do it joyfully? It's not a hardship. It doesn't have to be a stress or anxious or frantic. I am doing a class in March. I'm doing a class in March on getting out of debt joyfully, and there is no prerequisites, and it's over 4 different days, and it's spread apart, so you get some time to do some home play. And if you're hearing that and going, that's what I should be signing up to, but you're avoiding it, then maybe, what else are you avoiding? And don't stress. It can be fun. Okay. Even if you change like 1 or 2 points of view, it's amazing to see what eventuates from changing those points of view. So if you want, come and play and join in on that. And if not, that's fine too. You can buy the book. It's on Audible, as Michael was telling you that he listens to it. I listen to so many books lately. It's like reading and I'm like, I'm asleep. But when I'm driving or going for a hike or something, I like listening to books. I love Audible. So big shout out to Audible.
Yes.
Yeah. And please don't forget to subscribe. The subscription notes, give us a thumbs up, a review, etc. Wherever you're listening to this. We will have all of these details in the subscription notes for you, so you don't have to remember everything that we've been talking about. And have an amazing, wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to the podcast too. I'm truly, truly, truly grateful and love all of your feedback as well. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Just a huge, huge gratitude to you. That's like, I was listening to a podcast like half a year ago, and now I'm here. So grateful and so just honored. And how does it get any better? And let's have so much fun, everyone. Come on.
Yes. Yeah. What if this was just the beginning? Yes, I love it. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. And I look forward to hugging you at Elugar. So how does it get any better than this? Cool. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.